you, sir. Thank you. Thank you guys so much for coming. A few of you I recognize, a few of you I don't. But just kind of want to get a feel. What type of photography are most of you doing? Are we mostly weddings here or portraits or what? Weddings. So a lot of weddings. Awesome. That's what I do as well. So hopefully this will be helpful. So I am a wedding and some portraits photographer based out of Northern Colorado. I've been shooting weddings for almost 10 years. So close. And today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how I use gels in my wedding workflow, or just in photos in general. So we're gonna talk about all different processes in which to use color gels. Okay, this is the combination of these two products are my go-to for almost everything. So that's what we're gonna be discussing. I want you all to feel completely free to raise your hand and ask any questions. I don't necessarily want this to be overly too much of a lecture. I want you guys to feel free to ask any sort of questions. So for me, so we discuss this, right? Photography for me has always been about people. It's been about celebrating people, who they are on this very moment when I'm photographing them, and honoring that to the full extent. That has kind of been my why and what I absolutely love about photography. This right here is my family, and this is my why. This is my motivation. This is what gets me up and has me working every day. It's my 2 kids and my wife. I highly encourage, if you want to be a successful photographer, to pause and to sit with that for a moment and to ask yourself what your why is. There is no right or wrong answer. It can be the artistry of photography. It can be you want to have autonomy with your schedule. It can be whatever. But I think everyone will be a more successful individual and photographer if they can pause and think of what their why is and really sit with it for a bit. So we're going to jump into the presentation. Are you gelling? This has been a fun title that I stole from Trevor Daly. So look at these 3 photos here. All these photos were taken back to back to back, simultaneously. Exact same location, as you can see, nothing has changed. All 3 of these shots were taken, moments apart from each other. And this has not been done in Photoshop. Not a single one of these has been brought into Photoshop at all. Does anyone know how this is done? A few people maybe? So there's a little setting on your camera that we sometimes forget about called our white balance, right? We like to put it in auto white balance and hope that it looks the right color, right? And oftentimes it gets it right, but oftentimes it doesn't. And it also limits what we can do with our color gels. So in each one of these photos, I am using a different gel and I'm shifting my white balance. So if I wanted a blue sky, everyone's gone to a photo shoot or a location and the couple wants something really cool at the sunset, but then it's just kind of dull, right? We just kind of get some boring gray clouds. We've all had that, I think, right? And we can try to dramatize it by killing out a lot of the ambient light and adding the flash, and that's something that is awesome, and I hope that you do. But we can also add color very easily. What we're doing in each one of these is we're going into the white balance and we're shifting it to the color that we want. So if I want a blue sky, going into my white balance and I'm dropping it down to that blue corner. But then if I was to take a photo without doing anything else, what would happen to the couple? They look like Oompa Loompas, right? They turn blue as well. So how do we counteract that? How do we make it so the couple looks daylight temperature, 5,500 Kelvin roughly, but the sky looks really blue? We have to understand the color spectrum. We have to understand the opposite color on that spectrum. So the opposite color of blue on the color spectrum is orange. So what we're going to be doing is we are going to be adding an orange gel to your flash, and anywhere that light lands is now going to be counteracted to your white balance color, and it's going to have a natural look to it. Does that make sense? Is that kind of computing a little bit? And so in this, I'm taking my white balance all the way down to like 2,900 Kelvin, as cool as I can make it. And then I'm using a full CTO, as orange as I can. And if I really wanted to get extreme, I would stack 2 CTOs on top of each other and get really orange. And that is going to allow me to get this blue sky, but it allow the couple to look natural, not look blue. Same thing goes for these photos, exact same process. But again, you have to recognize what the color spectrum is and what the opposite color is. So in this one, same concept. Going into my white balance, I'm shifting it and making it super warm. I'm gonna push my white balance as high as it will go, 9,900, and likely in post, I'm gonna push it even further. And then to compensate for that, the opposite is gonna be blue. I'm putting a blue gel on. I'm flashing with a couple with a blue gel. It seems like it's not gonna work, but that's what you end up doing. And then to get a little bit more extreme, you're gonna go with your magentas. And if you remember in Lightroom, your tint slider, you have your pinks or your magentas on one side and your greens on the other, right? So I'm actually using a green gel on my flash, to get this purple sky. Kind of crazy, right? And it helps if your couple has a little bit of white or something that's a little bit neutral, so that in Lightroom you can easily make a little bit of adjustments for the white balance. Take your white balance dropper, hit it right on her white shirt or on a neutral color there, and that's gonna compensate it a little bit. But then in Lightroom, if you really want it to get pinky, right, you just go into your HSL slider and then just take those magentas and just kind of tweak them until you get the exact color that you're wanting. And you can do that with any of those colors. And if you really wanted some really crazy colors, you could make a green sky. You could make any color sky you really want. Again, you just have to have the appropriate gel that's opposite on the color wheel. Kind of cool, right? Yes.
What was the color white balance on the blue sky?
So this one was probably like 2,900. Like as low as my camera would go is where I would set it, yeah. And then even in there, I may shift it a little bit more and post. Mm-hmm. Any other questions about this before we go on? And I want to show you as well, this can be done in a lot of different ways. So this is just a real simple, like snowy backdrop, like on the mountain behind, but I wanted a little color. I wanted pop in my photo. Same concept, full CTO, shift the white balance to get super blue, snap away. Before we move on, any questions about that white balance shift? I know it's can be kind of a concept that's difficult to think through, but once you've done it a few times, it's really just as simple as recognizing what color you need and shifting your white balance appropriately. And if you go up on Google or something and you search, color spectrum, you're gonna see a pie graph essentially with all the colors, right? And again, you just have to grab the opposite side. Just go straight across on that spectrum, and that's the color you would use. Good. Any questions about this before I move on? Okay. So I'm gonna go through a couple of different fun photos where I've used colors to add interest to the photo so that you guys hopefully can be inspired to do something on your own. This was at the very end of an engagement session. We were done driving home, completely pitch back, and this is one of the most easy setups imaginable. Backlighting this couple. The fog just happened to be coming out of the trees. I wish I could say like, oh, we packed in 2 fog machines and plugged them in. No, it's just getting lucky. But this is a type of photo that your clients will love. And I typically, with my aesthetic of photography, I typically like to choose colors that feel more appropriate. But you could absolutely change this to any color. And this color shift is done with the gel. So my white balance is gonna be set at 5,500, which is gonna be your daylight, so that the temperature, or the color coming out of your flash, if you never change anything on it, is gonna be roughly 5,500. And that's to match daylight. So anytime you're not in daylight, you have to consider that, right? So in this one, I wanted to add that warm element to it. So I essentially just have a single flash behind the couple with a gel sphere combo, about 10 feet behind them. I like to do it at about waist level. The further away you get, kind of the bigger spread you're gonna get. If you get it in nice and close, it's gonna have like a nice tight light right on the couple. And typically, you'll wanna just avoid that flash being visible in the shot. So just be conscientious of that when you place it, that it's not too high or not too low, right? We don't want like the bright lights shining through their crotch hair or something crazy like that. So be aware of that, because that can ruin a photo real quickly. Okay, so this is a very fun photo that the vast majority of my clients, once they see it, they like to replicate it. The cigar photos has been something that has become really popular over the last couple years. And I think that everyone should add this to their repertoire. They should have this in their back pocket, because it's an easy shot, it's incredibly impressive, And most clients like to take a little break in the middle of their reception. I call this my reception sneak away. It's like 15 minutes. I encourage all my clients to go out and have a nice glass of wine or have a cigar or just relax and get away from the noise to have a moment. We do lots of different types of night shots during that sneak away. In this shot, the element of it that I really wanted to emphasize is the smoke. I didn't want that smoke to disappear. That's a huge part of this photo. And so behind the groom, about 5 feet or so, I have typically a sphere with a blue gel on it, right? And that's gonna be behind him, and that's gonna illuminate all the space around him. All the smoke that's billowing around him is gonna be lit by that. And then to the camera right, over in this area, I have another light with a grid on it. The grid, you guys, is very simple. It is essentially going to take your light from a 180-degree spread. So if you don't have a grid on it, essentially anything from the front of your flash forward is gonna be lit, right? It's gonna spread the light everywhere that direction. When you get this grid, as you can see, it's very, very narrow, and it's gonna take that light and it's gonna tighten it up to 40 degrees. So it's more intentional, more directional. And what's really cool about these is what happens if you stack another one. It gets a little bit tighter, right? So you go from a 40 to a 20 or roughly around there. So if you want a very tight light like that, throw that grid on there. And that's gonna create that Rembrandt lighting, that side lighting there. Any questions about the cigar shots? These should be done in a couple of different ways. So here you are seeing the setup right here, right? Camera shooting from the front, grid over to the side, blue gel behind the groom. Really simple setup. I know a lot of people ask about the camera gear and stuff, so I have those settings up there. Nothing too special. Essentially, when I'm gonna expose for this, I'm gonna be taking my sync speed of my flash, and so I need to stay below 250th of a second so that matches my sync speed. And typically all the light that you're gonna see in this photo is light that I'm adding. If there was no flashes, it would be completely black. Yeah?
So did you have a corrective gel to keep his skin a good color, or did you adjust the Kelvin in there?
Great question. So if this blue light would have been a little bit more to the side, he would have started getting a lot more blue on his face. But since it is just behind them, it is just lighting that rim light and the smoke behind him, correct? And so this flash that I have to the side of him, I don't have any gel on it. It's just at that 5500, so it's matching that daylight. And then in camera, I set my white balance to daylight, to 5500. And you can play around with this. You can do this with couples, you can do it in all different ways, and it, again, super fun. And if there's any one shot that you go home to your wedding clients and show them and pitch to them, it's something like this. I think your clients will be blown away and will really, really appreciate these type of shots. We also love to bring out all the groomsmen and do this with them as well. Same setup. Your side lighting needs to be a little bit more forward when you're doing this, right? Because if it's directly to the side, he's gonna throw a shadow on him, etc. So you need to pull your flash a little bit more forward so that you can cast it all the way across them. But exact same setup, same situation.
White balance the same? What's your white balance at?
Yeah, so on this one, my white balance would be 5,500, right around 55 to 6,000. My white balance stays there quite a bit unless I'm shifting things or I'm shooting receptions. So if the light that I had on, if I wanted this really, really, really blue, I certainly could put like a CTO or an orange gel on the front, and that would have made that blue really dark and really, really vivid, even more so than it is now. Cool. So we're gonna talk about another product here that doesn't actually get as much attention as it deserves. Are you guys familiar with the Mag Beam? Have you seen that, right? So I like to think of the Mag Beam as like a lighthouse Fresnel lens. Like, you know, a lighthouse is just a single small light, but it throws light like forever, like a mile away so everyone can see it. Just that tight beam that just casts it forever. That's what I think of the Mag Beam. Really simple. If you want to get a long ways away from the couple, that's the light to use. It's gonna, or the modifier to use. It's gonna throw that light super, super far. We talked about white balance, so I set my settings up here. And this one, I am shifting the color of the sky. The sky was blah, it wasn't interesting. I wanted color in my photo. That's my aesthetic, is bright, bold colors. And so in this, white balance shift, dropping it, as you see here, to 3,000. It's gonna get that really blue color. All this sky is now blue. It was just gray. And then on my Mag Beam, And here's a kind of straight out of the camera behind the scenes. You can see my assistant over there holding the mag beam. She's probably about 20 to 25 feet away. She's quite a ways away. Those beams can throw that light really far. But this is straight out of camera. So again, white balance is shifted to blue. Very straight setup. We have 2 lights here. We have one to the camera left, and then I have another one directly behind them. Both of them are going to be gridded in this particular scenario. And yes, sir.
You put the mag beam on the back?
Did I put the mag beam on the back of the couple? No. So the mag beam is over here to the side, kind of in front of them, and that's doing the front lighting. Behind them, I have another light as well that's creating kind of the rim lighting all around them. Great question, thank you. Yes?
What are the gels on the mag beam, and what are the gels on the back?
So all of the gels, both the one on the front and the one on the back in this scenario, have a full CTO, a full orange gel. So CTO, maybe I should make this clear, you'll hear me say that. CTO stands for color transfer orange. So you'll hear CTB, CTG, just the last initial. Just remember that that's the color. So B is gonna be blue, G is gonna be green, etc. So O is orange. So keep that in mind. Another fun setup. So this one we're using 2 separate colors. This was after a wedding. We wanted to go out for sunset photos, and the first dance or something got in the way, and the time got away, and it was dark by the time we were able to get out, completely dark. This is just a real simple city park that has a little fountain in the middle. Nothing, nothing unique whatsoever. And I have 2 lights in this setup. Let's see if I have this slide here. Yeah, here you can see it. So I have 2 lights in this setup. I have one to the side that is lighting up this got turned around. I have one on the side that's lighting up the fountain and the water as it's dropping. So I have one that's just flashing right at that. And then I have another one facing the couple. The one that's to the side that's lighting up the light, the fountain that of course has the blue gel on it. The one that's in front of them has the orange gel on it. And then essentially when you are wanting to create these kind of backlit silhouette photos, you always want to keep in mind their profiles, right? So if they didn't look at each other, you would just see round heads. So I always encourage to have as much of a silhouette as you can with hands, with faces, with mouths, with noses, with those type of things. Dresses, if you can pull dresses out, etc. Okay, so you guys, I want to just open it up for any sort of questions that we might have about gelling. We have about 3-ish to 5-ish minutes. This is my social media handles. You guys are totally welcome to message me directly if you want to. Happy to answer that. And before we kind of wrap things up, do you have any questions about any of these photos or anything gel related?
Are you single?
Am I single? Been married for 13 wonderful years. So, yes.
Okay, so for most of these, that you're seeing the blue sky, you've got it back down to 3,000 for your color temperature.
Correct.
And then you're using a full CTO orange on the gel.
So let me tell you my default go-to for white balance to gels. This isn't always going to work, but it's a good go-to. Always if you take one thing from this presentation, take your camera out of auto white balance and put it into manual white balance. It will drastically change the coloring in your photos. Drastically. You now choose the color rather than your camera. How powerful is that? It's amazing how we consider our shutter speed, or we consider our other settings, but we sometimes overlook our white balance, right? And if color is an important element to your photos, let's take control of those colors, right? So my go-to for my white balance, and this is I think getting to your question, is when I walk into a room and I look at how orange the light is. And I'll even pull out my orange gels and I'll look up at the lights and I'll try to match it and kind of get one that matches a similar look. I'll hold it up to a window and kind of try to match it. But my default is if I have a quarter CTO, I go to 4,000 Kelvin. If I have a half CTO, I go to 3,500 Kelvin. If I have a full CTO, I go to 3,000 Kelvin. That's my go-to. And then from there, if I need to make minor tweaks in post, I can. But that's just what I go to by default. Anytime during the day, anytime we're shooting in natural light, I leave my camera at 6,000. 5,500 is typically white balance. I like it just slightly warmer, just a teeny bit. So that's where my camera typically lives, is at 6,000. for most of the shots where I'm using natural light, or I'm not using color gels to change the color of my lighting. But other than that, then yeah, those are kind of my defaults that I go to. And then if I want orange, just the same thing, I typically go, or excuse me, if I want to have a blue sky, I'm typically going to go to the warmest color, or excuse me, if I want to have a warm sky, I'll typically go to my warmest color, 9,900, and I'll use a full blue gel. If I don't go to a full blue gel, it doesn't make a big enough difference to be worth it to me. So I push it to that full extreme level. Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Take care.